I've essentially wrapped what I want to share this morning underneath the title of 2 Profit Killers for Contractors. How many of you would agree that there's hundreds of ways to lose money in a contracting business? You're right. And what I want to share this morning is how, yes, there are hundreds of ways, but really they all roll up to 2 categories of profit killers. My goal is to try to teach you how to think about how to estimate your jobs, how to track your jobs, how to make sure that you're being profitable, and what happens when insurance goes up, or you buy another truck, or you need to hire an office admin. How does that impact your rates? The big idea is here that whether you're doing pen and paper, whether you're doing spreadsheets, whether you want to use a system like what SynkedUP does to speed it up, the principles I'm sharing this morning apply to whatever system you're using today. It's not like you have to say, go use a certain app or a certain thing. It's more about the principle, how to think, and you can decide how it best fits your company as you work to implement these things. My name's Weston Zimmerman, just a little bit about where I'm from and how I got into this industry. And been a contractor my whole life with this team here. Tussie Landscaping is a company in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, just under 2 hours east of here. Matt and Steve Martin are brothers that started the company the year before I was born. So that tells you how long it's been around. But I'm super grateful for this company and this team. They essentially grew me up, you could say. I started working there when I was 16 years old. And I started as a laborer on the crew, and I worked my way up over time, eventually running a crew, and eventually wanted to make more money as an employee. So I ended up, as an employee does, asking for a raise. Let's just say it didn't exactly go super well, okay? And it's my own fault. I had what I call an employee mindset. That being said, one of the things that the owners of the company did and were very good at was sending us as a team to events like this. And that really meant a lot to us as employees, because it kind of like, we took pride in what we were doing, and it allowed us to have the mindset and the mentality of, hey, I can get better at what I'm doing, and the company's investing into me. So really, really commend Steve and Matt for being willing to do that. And one of the things that they did was, we did water features, as you can tell there in the photo. And one of the things that they did is they sent us out to the aquascape event called Pandemonium in Chicago every year. And I loved doing the water features. When I was out there, I was saying like I wanted to make more money. And I cornered Greg Whitstock, the CEO of Aquascape, out there at one of his events one year and asked him like, hey, can I work for you? And he looked at me like I lost my mind, because he was like, dude, you work for one of my best customers, like, why do you want to come work for me? And I told him like, well, I just kind of looking for a job that I can make more money at. And he ended up saying, okay, here's what you need to do. You go back and ask your boss what you can do to make the company more money so that you can make more money. That whole exchange lasted 90 seconds, but that was a real light bulb moment for me and a paradigm shift ever since. And that changed my trajectory from like, what can I get out of this, to, oh, duh, of course. If an employee or even you as an owner want to make more money, where does it have to come from? Your company. And without the company making the money, none of that can happen. And so I went back, and that's exactly what I did, and that's what led me into doing the marketing for the company. And so I ended up working essentially 2 full-time roles. I was 9 months out of the year, I was running a crew, doing high-end design build projects, and then in the wintertime, I was doing, websites, YouTube, content. What happened when my mindset was kind of like shifted as an employee to like, oh, how do I generate value for the company I work for, or how do I generate value in the marketplace, kind of triggered a problem-solving mindset. I remember when I started there, like, we did not know our numbers, I can promise you that, but Steve and Matt were intent on going to seminars like this and would come home with spreadsheets or come home with things that we eventually figured out how to solve this problem of knowing our numbers and making sure we're being profitable. And as we were doing this, I ended up working on getting us off of paper onto software, on solving these problems more programmatically instead of just on pen and paper. And the stars aligned, and we ended up getting in touch with a software developer, and that's kind of the whole introduction of how SynkedUP started. Through going to events, I had started to kind of develop this vision of like, this is not a unique problem to Tussie landscaping. Like, we're not special. This is an industry-wide problem. Like, how many of you feel like, I love what I do, but don't put them in the office? It's most contractors. And so my vision and mission today with SynkedUP is to make that office part as easy as possible, automate it as much as possible, and get you back out doing what you love, but making money doing it. And I ended up working there for 15 years before I eventually cut over to SynkedUP full time. December 2020 was my last timesheet at Tussie Landscaping. We finished up a beautiful 16-foot pondless waterfall. So I'm going to share a bit of a storyline called a narrative that paints the picture we had at Tussie Landscaping, and most likely you also felt this at some point in your career or are feeling it today, now in your business. But imagine with me in this narrative for you have this situation of you get a lead for your biggest job yet, and then you sweat for hours crunching the numbers, and you get to this moment, and it's so hard to send that thing. I've talked to contractors that have finished a bid 2 weeks ago, and it's just sitting there. Yes, man. Do I have enough hours in that thing? Too many? Are they going to go for it? You know what the number one factor is on who's going to win that job? Turnaround time. And every time we fight this part, it's not even the price that's killing us. It's the turnaround time. So price is a factor. It's not a non-factor. But the idea is you've got the lead, sizzling hot, and then you let it cool off because of uncertainty. And why are we uncertain? It's because we're not sure if this is right. And there's an element to where this is always going to happen, especially if it's work that you've never done before and you're kind of like making a bunch of projections. But if it's the kind of thing that you've done repeatedly, you've done a handful of times, you know how long it's going to take you, and you're still feeling uncertain, that's a solvable problem. When we live in this reality where this is how we're feeling, and you send that out, and Mrs. Jones goes, I love it! I got 55K, let's do it. What do? Payroll's due. You need to fill the calendar. What do? You negotiate on scope and not price. And what that means is, instead of saying, okay, I'll do the exact same work that I have in this scope of work for 55K instead of 60, that's called negotiating on price. Instead, you're like, sure, what would you like to do, Mrs. Jones? Would you like to take the lighting out? Would you like to simplify the design? Would you like to make it smaller? And you make a bunch of expert suggestions on what they could do to cut the budget to the point where they're willing are able to spend. But the problem is what is the necessary ingredient for you to be able to say, what would you like to cut out? What is the necessary emotional posture that you have to be able to refuse the 55K and instead say, what would you like to cut out? Confidence in your pricing. And how do we get that? That's what we're going to dive into the rest of the day. Ultimately, the reason I'm kind of sitting on this slide for a minute is I want you to realize that it's not so much the tactical, it is this confidence that is required for you to get quick turnaround time and not negotiate on that price when Mrs. Jones is trying to negotiate with you. If she's telling you your competitor's 20% less, my favorite response to that is like, interesting, just curious, why haven't you hired them yet? Obviously they're cheaper. And then just shut up. Silence is your friend. A not confident person will try to fill the void of silence with gibber. And that is a killer. We're humans at the end of the day. And this is a nuanced process. But you have to have a foundation of confidence to be stable and not sabotage yourself in your sales process. So what happens when we live in this reality? It's like, well, what's the solution? How do I get past this? How do I solve this problem? And you might try coming up with your own homebrew spreadsheets. You might try hours and hours of crunching the numbers, even a little bit of educated guessing, which again will happen if it's the very first time you've done work like that. And of course, the infamous question of, on Facebook groups, what would you charge with a blurry picture from 50 feet away? Is your overhead the same as his? No. Is his overhead the same as his? Nope, exactly. And in fact, even your own overhead, is it the same today as it was 3 months ago? Exactly. This is why it is impossible for anyone other than you to answer this question. What other people other than you can answer is things like how many man hours, with some nuance of like with this type of equipment, with this level of experience on the crew. Like those are kind of more apples to apples comparisons. But when it's like, hey, my bid's 30 grand, is that high or low? Nobody can answer that question except for you. But the result of living in this world is you end up feeling like you're reinventing the wheel on every quote. It's exactly what leads you to allowing your client to negotiate with you on the price, because I just can't stand on my own 2 feet and say, no, it's $60,243.37. How many of you feel this in your experience? Working your tail off all year, you have 5-star reviews, you have happy clients, you're proud of the work you've done, but your bank account balance doesn't show the results. The good news is again, it is a solvable problem. So the solution, in a nutshell, and this is what we're going to dive into the nuance of, is to essentially plug every dollar your business spends into a thing we call a budget, so that it can calculate your rates, meaning get your man-hour rate back out, your overhead recovery, your profit margin. And once you've done this work, this is the automatic outcome. You're rock solid confident in that price that you're sharing. Because you know, if you sell that $60,000 job for $55,000, I'm essentially paying for the privilege to do the work. Does that sound like a business or a hobby? I prefer my hobbies to be things like snowboarding, fishing, not masking up and running a paver saw.